Right, perhaps you can see me. I'm just going to escape the screen to see where we are. Good. Fantastic. Hopefully everybody is in. Just check we haven't got anybody stuck anywhere. Looks good. Just looking for one of our guests. Ellie, have you made it in?
I'm here. Thanks, Clive.
Ah, fantastic. In that case, we can start. Thank you. Let's go. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, a little bit later than we wanted to. While we fiddle around with technology, but it's fantastic to have you all join us. We've got a brilliant turnout tonight. Thank you. This is our first webinar of the RCA Service Design 2020 Festival of Better Ideas. Of course, our ideas are better. If we didn't make them better, why would we be here? So it's really great to have you all join us and look at the first event of what will be a 2-week festival, where we have events with students presenting their projects, along with guest speakers on Monday, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and another seminar next Thursday as well. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But first of all, I must introduce you to the course. As I hope many of you will know, but perhaps not all of you will know, service design at the RCA has been a really pioneering course that was set up only 8 years ago. I think this is the 7th cohort to graduate. And as I hope I said, my name is Clive Grinier. I'm the relatively new head of this course, joining last September. When it was very interesting then, but of course, as the year went on, it got a lot more interesting and a lot more challenging. So it's been an incredible roller coaster of a first year for me, but of course the students as well. But every year, the students who graduate have gone on to transform the world they've gone into, across business, across government. And this year, we have 140 students across our 2 years, 70 in the first year and 60 in this year, 65 in this year, who are, I think, providing the antidote to many aspects of life. We live in a world of technology push. We live in a world of very poor services, of very poor customer experiences that are poorly orchestrated, that are not designed, that are not orchestrated. And for me, my passion for service design and my passion for this course is that we are creating amazing people who know that and want to transform the world and make better services and better customer experiences and really transform it. Here are the physical presents on my first day when I started at the RCA. And this was a combination of second and first years on that day back in September. And of course, here they are now. Here are the 60 or so second years who are graduating. This was the day after their exams, their final exams, when they put themselves in the virtual Albert Hall, which sadly we're not going to be able to get back into for quite a while. And also we're not going to be able to chuck our mortarboard hats around for a bit, but one day we will all come back and we will make sure we have a physical convocation. But it has clearly been a tumultuous time. They have responded magnificently with resilience and courage. They've mastered the tools of the Miro and Mural whiteboard. They've used social media to reach out to communities with some incredible stories of success, and they're ready. I magnificently put unsocial media there, which is what happens when you fix a slide seconds before you go live. But they have continued to research, to prototype and validate their better ideas. And not just looking at the current. Some of the projects you'll see during the course of this 2 weeks have pivoted around COVID and pivoted around pandemic and future pandemics and design for safety. But we also carried on looking at technology, looking at the disruptions that businesses are going through, looking how to create better communities, looking at society's issues, looking at technology's issues of bias in automated processes, and looking at those very human things. How do we stay healthy and how do we look after our planet? How do we keep our planet healthy? And you'll see evidence of that right the way through the student work. So this is a special year. These are special students. We're ready to share their impact on the world. So I'm going to give you a little brief intro to the student work that we've got on the website. Today was the go live day for RCA 2020 website on the official RCA site. And there you can see all the students' work. And one of the things you will realize when you look at these pages is that some of these projects appear twice. That's because we very much work as teams. All the projects through the course of the year are team-based projects. In this final project, most people team up in pairs. Some teams are larger than that, but you also have a sprinkling of people who are doing it individually. Now, the RCA website is geared up for individual artists and designers. So apologies for repetition, but you will go and see the individual students who are in those teams. In addition, we have our own website that I set up when I arrived as an archive, basically, of all the amazing project work that gets done here through the terms and through the years. But we've repurposed that. We repurposed it as a whip show in the work in progress show back in January, and we've used it again to give you access to the projects that the students have done. It's about 33 projects. And on that website, we've also put it into themes. And the themes will be seen across the events that we go through over the next 2 weeks. So we're going to start. I'm going to very, very rapidly share with you every single one of the projects. And the reason I'm doing that is at the end of this seminar, the students will be available on their own individual Zoom rooms for each of these projects. So we would very much like you, as if we were in a physical show, to drop in and say hello. So if you see a project you'll be interested in, jot it down on a piece of paper. At the end of the seminar, we'll be giving you access to a secret web page that you can open up from the chat box. And that will allow you to drop into the Zoom room of any student you want to right away. There's also a function to set up a Calendly app to set up an appointment with them at another time. So we're trying to make this experience as close as we can. So the students will be in their rooms. Go and see them. Go and see a few students at the end of this if you can. You can be having your dinner. You can be sipping a glass of wine at the end of this. But we'd really like you to do that. So I'm going to, with great efficiency, I hope, take you through the 33 projects very, very briefly, and do stop and just note any that you would like to see. Human condition is the catch-all we've given to culture and society. So in this project, you've got Beatrice Mandelstab and Jess Stein with their project Ray, which is about the future of sleep with IKEA. We have Rosa Fernandez, Is This Love? Safe platform for people in emotionally abusive relationships. We have Cami Shah with Heart to Heart, working with the V&A and museums as therapeutic environments for relationships. Amelia Dorazio and Soumya Singhal have created Across Silos with local authority Barking and Dagenham to join up their services and practitioners and local authorities, people who are rarely joined. Lydia Louis has created DOT using data science and personalized activities for young kids, for hassled parents who need their kids to do things in their long summer holidays that aren't just sitting on PlayStations. Kiyohiro Izumo created Bump Into, a music platform for early stage musicians to support music innovation and build their communities as they develop their skills. UNU created Everyone, a toolkit for children with special needs. Beautiful, simple way of introducing special needs into normal classrooms. And Radhika Agrawal and Fanghui Song created Nurture with Camden Council, empowering seniors to engage with their communities and promote intergenerational engagement. And our largest team, Chao Dai, Kun Chan, Hutang Li, and Yushan Zai, created Next, a truly amazing project of audio chat rooms connecting students who want to study abroad with those who are already abroad, currently proudly boasting nearly 100,000 TikTok followers. Something that's happened in this pandemic has been our use of social, not unsocial media. Students are very concerned with the climate, as you wouldn't be surprised to know, as we all are, and we're using our creativity on this course to create some extremely compelling solutions for that. So Christina has created Analu, which is working with customers and the fashion industry to change behaviors for sustainable fashion. Yuxan Lu, or Mimi, has created Pressure Shanghai, which is a charming app using a cat avatar called Mimi, who walks around Shanghai finding environmentally responsible businesses and allows people to go to that coffee shop, go to that business because they are responsible environmentally. Constance Chung has created Birdie, appreciating neighbor in her neighborhoods, built from her experiences of walking in the hills with her father. It's a beautiful, empathetic piece of work to help us understand the environment around us. And powering food waste. This was a work in progress project done by Rutong, Constance, and Rosa. And this is about sharing knowledge of what you can do with food waste, what products are available. And anyone who remembers the WIP show, there were some beautiful examples of that. And Rosa's own project in this final show is Climate 101, a project to put climate content into every single university course. She worked initially with Imperial, went on to work with Cambridge and Delft, and looked at how an English course, not just an engineering or science course, but how every single course in the university curriculum can create content and share that content about climate change. Terrific project, great aspiration, and already having an impact. And finally, Ming Kyung Shin and Hwangjo Kim created, and I can't see it on my Suplin, which is about, again, sustainability in the fashion industry, but looking at the industry to help them make the changes to appeal to a changing consumer base. We have financial services represented through 5 projects. We have Carl McDonald, who created Evergreen, a sustainable investment club for people who want to ensure that their investments, that they are investing in sustainable funds and companies. Tammy Tang, Shang Lui, and Binhai Wang created Purchase Power, which is built on an open banking platform, and it's about helping your affordability, helping understand your credit score, helping you use the massive knowledge across all your accounts to have a more powerful spending and loan capability. Tina Chu created Money Buddy, banking for customers with mental health vulnerabilities. It's a stressful thing, finance. Haijun Bei and Jade Meng produced Mobius with a very famous investment company that we're not allowed to say who they are, but it's private banking for a new millennial generation. Superbly detailed project. And Zhuaquan Li and Runa Yu created LabY, which is a financial education and literacy tool for 5 to 12-year-olds. Get them young. Moving on to urban living. Just reminding you that all these students, or a lot of these students, will be available in their Zoom rooms after this. And we have themed events for each of these events over the next 2 weeks. So you can check out on the website if you're interested in seeing those. London's Land Bank, lot. Apologies for not showing the correct image. Oh, I know, the correct image is here. There we go. So Asta Jory and Francesco Cagnola created Lot, which is about food systems in the urban planning, those unloved plots of land, and how to bring together people to overcome some of the legal barriers, some of the community antipathy, to take those unloved plots and turn them into food production. Helen Benz and Shamin have created MIDAR, which is about data control, a method of understanding how your data is collected. Excuse me, let me check my notes. Jason Park and Sujiban Susilakanthan have created Urban Moments, which is working with Visa and Andre's team, who will be speaking in a minute. And it's using data of people walking to work to persuade them to work, to change their behavior, to exercise and come off public transport, and at the same time use that data to incentivize to use local businesses. And we'll be hearing later from Kieran Dooley with her project with London Fire Brigade and Common Ground. So I won't say anything more about that. Knock Knock from Irene Liao and Amog Lux is about building collaboration, working with WHG, Warsaw Housing Group, building stronger communities and social opportunities. And Andrew Sito has created Graham's Guide to Digital Being, Digital Mindfulness. This is a speculative project of a future movement of creating the equivalent of the AA or the RAC, as was created for the chaos of roads, the chaos of data. Another fascinating project. Future Skills is around the future of work. Nayeon Lee and Rong Hua have created Meta, which is about shared stories and future thinking, and you're going to see that presentation first. And Cecilia Santuccio has used art organizations to teach corporate bodies to allow those art organizations to become financially stable, and teach corporations and tech startups empathy and inclusivity. Finally, we have Living Well. We have Tarek Helmi, who's created Carify, a project for carers of dementia patients. We are going to hear shortly, I'm out of order. Care Panion is from Shuning Wang and Sally Zhu. It's about caring for the carers again, but for end-of-life carers in hospices and people who are near the end of life. Gina Kim and Haijing Lee have done Talk and Brew. Again, if you remember the Work in Progress show, they actually were brewing tea to improve your mental health and your resilience at work. And this is about stress and loneliness and how brewing tea and reflecting on mental health at the same time. Household Health by Pina Pipon and Alessandro Peon, we're going to hear from during this set of presentations as well. And finally, but not least, Agata Juskevich, I think I pronounced that terribly, produced at the Work in Progress show, Nutrition, which was an award winner from the Grand Challenge with CERN and is an app to help you with your healthy eating. So thank you for listening to me as I rush through those projects. I hope you're going to spend some time after this talking to the students. Now, I've hijacked the seminar to show you a little bit of this work, and we're going to have through the night 5-minute presentations, 3 of them, and we're going to start with Lucia and Rong with their ThoughtWorks presentation. Then we're going to hear from Lou, who I'm sure all of you know. I'll do a brief introduction to Lou when we get there. Then we're going to have Kieran talking about Common Ground, and then I'll be introducing Andre from Visa. Then Pini Alessandro will talk about household health, and finally Ellie Runcie from the BBC. And then we'll have a round table. So just before we get into the first presentation, a reminder that this seminar is about visible impact. We had a seminar called Invisible Impact back in January, where we celebrated the achievements of service design, but wondered, where that impact was. We asked that question. Well, I think now, as we come out of COVID, we're coming to a new world, a post-COVID, a post-Black Lives Matter, a post-Extinction Rebellion. The world is changing pretty quickly, but we want to see where we are now. Where is service design? Where is the power of that? And that's why I've invited these 3 fabulous speakers to talk to us tonight. So let's get going. And I'm going to be driving the presentations. And I'd like to ask Lucia and Rung up to the stage, as it were. Have you turned your videos on, and can you speak? Can we hear you?
Yes, hi.
Hi, great. Now, first of all, I must point out that Lucia is in Seoul, which I think is it 2 o'clock in the morning for you?
Yes, 2:30.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I've been talking too long. And Rong is in Beijing, so in a similar state. I really appreciate you staying up to do this. I apologize for the terrible time difference, but let you get on with your presentation. I think it's a fabulous project. I want everyone to see it. Okay, tell me when you want me to change slides.
Cool. So thank you, Claude. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Lucia or Nayun, and hopefully not being the first of the presentations today, hopefully we'll kick it off on a good note. So Ron, do you want to continue?
Yeah. Hi everyone. This is Ron, and Lucia and I worked on our project. Actually, we worked on several projects together, and they are pointing us towards our final project. And it's a project today we're presenting. We name our project as Engagement for Future Thinking. And also this time we work with SolidWorks, London consultancy company. Clive, next slide, thanks. We actually worked on developing a methodology that utilizes speculative design and storytelling in a business context. Next slide, please. So the storytelling, people-focused and co-creational approach that we do well in service design, put together with speculative design, thinking about futures, creating possible scenarios. And the next slide explain why is that valuable, because whereas design thinking today is greatly associated with current problem solving, we believe that's just the tip of the iceberg of what design can do. So by taking a speculative design approach, next slide, thanks. Yeah, by taking a speculative design approach, especially in a business context, we are trying to build a bridge, not from now to the future, but backward from the future to now, so that we can meet in the middle. And next slide, that's what our methodology does. It helps people in the organization frame their own stories about the company using a metaphor of a forest. And understand the current situation. The next slide also shows that's an example of our storybook. Thanks. Yeah. So it's helped people understand the current situation, but also having conversations about the future challenges and potentials to spot opportunities for new strategy and new service design ideas. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's an example of how people can co-create with us and come up with new ideas for their company. And we prepared a short video to give you a brief explanation about Meta, a service that we packaged our methodology into.
It's a new consulting service in the format of workshops to help engage different levels of employees in the creation of company vision and roadmap for change. Meta's workshops focus on the discovery phase of the conventional double diamond method. It emphasizes enabling employees to participate in extremely divergent conversations to come up with new and creative ideas by thinking of the present and future using a metaphorical story of the company. Meta helps participants create their own story of the company with it as a forest, trees as skills, and individuals or employees as foragers. Participants also actively add to the story with more elements and details. A metaphor, due to the ambiguity and different interpretations it allows, it actually fuels different ideas. It can help people think outside the box, communicate tacit or intangible ideas, and it allows conversations to cut across different professional backgrounds or expertise. An increasing number of companies are facing the problems of the top-down approach in organizational changes, like lack of participation or engagement from employees, or half-hearted, short-lived changes. Meta, on the other hand, engages various individuals in the organization, asking them for their input and their stories and taking a bottom-up approach. It uses stories and metaphors to communicate and deliver the message. Because humans are story-driven, we can help create change that resonates with people, leading to a long-lasting change. Meta was developed and tested with a consultancy company based in London, and here's what they had to say about the experience they had with Meta.
So it was a very robust metaphor, but it felt appropriate, kind of rich enough and free and open enough that we could do things with it. I mean, also the metaphor of the forest, it's spread across time and it's got, you know, it's four-dimensional.
It just felt like a one conversation that got progressively richer and deeper the more we went through it.
In 4 years of ThoughtWorks, I've never had a conversation like that. Have more of an appreciation for the challenges faced by people who are tasked with trying to help the business navigate.
That we were taking ideas from each other and like putting it into our future. And I thought that was great because I always think that there's never like, you know, an individual consciousness. I think there is definitely a collective consciousness that people tap into.
Developing shared perspective. So explore this with a group of people from different parts of the business. It really helps broaden your understanding of where you are in the organization.
Oh, sorry. We don't want the film again. Anyway, thank you very much for showing us that. You can now go clubbing or whatever you want to do. Probably go to bed. Really appreciate you showing us that film, and I hope you all enjoyed that and gives you a feel for some of the projects, and we'll have a couple more as we go along. Thanks, Lucia. Thank you, Ron. So now, thank you for your patience, everybody. We now, Lou, I hope you're there. Let me stop sharing my screen.
I am indeed. Hello.
There you are. They would try and seamlessly bring you in. I don't think Lou Downe needs a huge amount of introduction. Lou obviously came to fame through her leadership at Government Digital Services, GDS, which very quickly became the head of service design for the UK government, now looking at architecture and home in the whole of the UK, through her role with Homes England. And of course, even more than that, my time, I think, is marked at the RCA by the publishing of Lou's book. I remember running in to everyone saying, you've got to read this. And I think most of them have so far. So thank you for publishing good services. I know you've been doing great things. I've just received a big parcel of your posters. I haven't opened them yet, I'm sorry, but they're going up in the studio very soon. So I'll shut up and welcome Lou Downe. Thank you very much. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Clive. It's really great to be here. I feel like equally as much as you know, kind of Clive's time has been marked by the progress of me publishing a book, equally my progress of publishing this book has been marked by speaking to the RCA students about it. And so firstly, apologies for anyone who's heard bits of this talk before. Your feedback and thinking has really contributed to me thinking about it. And just, you know, wow, from everything that Clive has presented, you know, this evening and from hearing the last talk, you have everything to be proud of for everything that you've done at your time at RCA, and I have no doubts that you will go on to do amazing things. So let tonight be a kind of celebration, or the beginning of a celebration of all of the amazing things that you've done. So yes, welcome, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about just the context that we're in, because now must feel a really scary time to be graduating, and I don't think that it should be. As many of the kind of other sort of slightly older designers on this call will have experienced, there are many challenges that you will face in your career, not least economic downturn and kind of global crises such as we are in at the moment. And I have the kind of unfortunate sort of history of having kind of graduated in the last economic crisis, 2008, and I know a little bit about what it feels like. But there has never been a more important moment for designers. And now is an incredibly both scary and sad time, but it's also an incredibly important time full of amazing opportunities to not go back to the normal that we had before. And I think, you know, for many of us, it feels as if actually the world has changed more in the last 4 months than it has in the last 4 years, for both good and bad. you know, we have seen incredible changes to the way that we work. Physical spaces turned into hospitals, different services turned to different uses, people's lives turned upside down, and in incredibly fast ways. You know, just one of the most poignant moments of this whole thing has been the fact that by the time Boris Johnson was in hospital, a letter arrived on people's doorsteps saying to stay at home. Those two things happened as quickly as each other. And it's challenging. It's challenging to the way that we do design. It's challenging to the way that we make decisions in the public sector as well. And it's actually highlighted a lot of divisions that have already been there and made them more clearly visible to all of us. And the world was almost instantly divided in a number of different ways into services that understand themselves as services. So things like supermarkets providing a public service of food towards people who are vulnerable. So this is actually a picture from Spain of a local supermarket who were tasked by the Spanish government to provide care packages for people in the local community who couldn't go shopping themselves. A fantastic example of the kind of private sector mobilizing to support public service. Equally, we've seen very strange things happen. This, I think, headline from Mercedes, I think, is possibly the weirdest that I've seen. So strange that actually the BBC didn't know quite where to categorize it and put it in Formula One in the sports news, that actually Mercedes had started to make breathing equipment, and not just making breathing equipment, actually making the patterns of creating it freely available to anyone who wanted to create it. So completely upturning their business model from where they were, which is fascinating. But also services that have not understood themselves as services as well. You know, we've seen a real kind of divide of people who have got it and people who kind of haven't. And we've seen an increasing amount of this, you know, people, you know, kind of being told to wait for web services and organizations just not really understanding how to communicate with people. Not least, I think the public sector and the government has not necessarily shone itself in an excellent light. I am still a public service, so I can't say too much about it. But I think some of the advice and guidance we've seen really just from a service design point of view has just not been thought through. The things like wear face masks on public transport. This photograph, whilst it's very funny, is also quite sad and shows just the fact that, you know, if you don't explain things clearly to people, people will get it wrong. And so clear communication has been no more important at this time than it has been at any other time. But it's also divided the world into the people that we think about. So, you know, the kind of white, middle class, elderly, and the people that we don't think about, people subject to domestic abuse who are stuck at home with domestic abusive partners, or people who are deaf and hard of hearing who would struggle to use masks. And I think what we've seen is actually just a fundamental shift in the way that we think about change and the way that we approach change. And that actually, rather than this kind of huge inertia of whataboutery that we normally face when we ask to do something different, actually what we've seen is that the fact that when the risk of doing nothing is greater than doing something, we will almost do anything to change. And it's sort of led to this world where actually we're kind of, you know, incredibly hasty about the decisions that we're making, to the detriment of the speed that we are producing things, but also to the detriment of the quality of the things that we're producing. And I've had many stories from designers and user researchers in all sorts of companies telling me that it's incredibly difficult now at the moment to get the kind of message across that we need to be user-centered. But it means that we need to be talking about that much more and much more loudly than we were before. Because bad services ruin people's lives. And I'll tell you a story that actually kind of led to the book almost being created. And it's a story about Anne, who is a school teacher just outside of Rochdale in New York. Some of you may have heard this story, so apologies if you have. But Anne teaches quite young children, so between the ages of 5 and 8. She qualified as a teacher in 2001. And she earns about £42,000 a year, which is not a lot if you are a mum of 3, single mum, and you're living just outside of New York. So Anne does 3 jobs to try and make ends meet. And she does this because she owes £77,000 to the US government in student loans as well. Something that I'm sure will be close to many of your hearts. And she can't afford to make the monthly repayments on her student loan. because unfortunately, although Anne qualified for a scheme that would mean that she got to essentially not repay her loan, she will be only if she made 120 consecutive payments over 10 years, Anne will unfortunately be paying back her loan for the next 25 years. And it's because of a company called Navient. So Navient are one of 7 providers who look after student loans and repayments in the US. And they, aside from their terrible copywriting skills, of which I don't know what you would understand from that first paragraph, they also practice what they call a 7-minute rule. And the 7-minute rule means that nobody within Navient can have a phone call extend over 7 minutes without losing their bonus. So you have to essentially, as a Navient employee, answer the phone, answer someone's queries, and put the phone down within 7 minutes, otherwise you lose your bonus. And you can imagine the people who work for Navient get paid even less than Anne does. So when Anne tried to lower her payments, she was told to pause them. Because essentially the only thing you can do in 7 minutes with Navient is to pause your payments rather than lower your payments, which means that rather than 120 consecutive payments over 10 years, which Anne would have needed to qualify for that scheme and writing off her loan, she actually paid 83 consecutive payments over 19 years. But it's not just individual users that we're harming. You know, that's a bad service. That tiny little change to that service has a massive effect on Anne, but it has an even bigger effect on society. And in 2018, there was a record shortage of teachers in the US, due in part to the fact that teachers can no longer afford to study to teach. And that's having a huge effect on the education of our children as well. You know, 80% of Californian schools last year were appointing unqualified teachers because of the fact that they find it so difficult to find qualified teachers. And I've, as you can imagine, spent a lot of time thinking about why we don't pay attention to these problems. Why is it that service design causes some of the biggest, most fundamental problems in our society? And really tiny changes could have massive effects. And why do we not see them? And I think it comes down to the fact that services are invisible. Services are kind of the gaps between things. They're the sort of space between you booking something and it arriving, or being diagnosed or being treated. And they're sort of like this guy on the right-hand side, you know, kind of he's performing the role of being the post office sign while the sign is being repaired. And rather than service design being a sort of combination of conscious decisions, it's actually more likely to be the consequence of sort of things like technology compromises or legal boundaries or personal taste or political trends, which means that actually services end up looking a bit more like this. This is actually a Ministry of Justice service, and I defy anyone to know how it works by just looking at it, because I certainly can't. And, you know, I can think it's quite clear to see that actually this service is exactly the product of all of these things, the technology compromises, the political trends and the personal taste, although I'm not sure who wanted a service to look like this themselves. But when it comes to actually changing these services and making an organization is really, really hard, like really, 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 really hard. And I'm not saying that to put you off, I'm saying that to kind of forewarn you about how this works, but it is possible. And the spoiler is that actually the hardest part is actually getting your organization to realize it's a service provider in the first place. And I think this comes down to a sort of idea of about service literacy that we all need to start being aware of. And service literacy, I think, falls into kind of 3 different things, which is firstly seeing services, understanding that services are things that can be designed in the first place, understanding what makes a good service, and then committing to designing them. And all of those 3 things need to be there for us to actually build better services, in my experience. You can have one of those things, you can have people seeing services but not committing to them and it won't work. You have to have all 3. So I'm not going to talk about all 3 today because we would be here for a long time. We've only got 15 minutes, so I will try and be quick, Clive, sorry. But I think the problem with the fact that we don't talk about this middle one is the fact that we often say that what a good service is kind of depend on what the service is itself. And of course, you know, if you've got a dog grooming service versus you know, kind of healthcare service, it is completely different. but there are some things that almost everyone needs from almost every service that they encounter. And those are really, really basic things. So they're things like being able to find the service that you are looking for. So can you hit Google and find the thing that you're looking for and find your way to that service? That's kind of task number one. Can you use your service without being an expert in how it works? And the public sector is really, really bad at doing this, by the way. We like to educate people and we like to train them in how stuff works before they use it. Or can you complete the thing from start to finish without having any dead ends? So if you lose your phone and you've got two-factor authentication turned on, can you still use the service? Is always the question we should be asking. So all of these things, all of this thinking culminated in me writing a book earlier on this year called Good Services, How to Design Services That Work for People. And it is a collection of 15 really basic principles that every service should deliver in order to essentially work for users. And these are not revolutionary. They will be the things that you will find in every single user research project you will ever do. But ultimately, they are the baseline things that that we should all be using in our services to help us to understand whether or not that thing is doing what it needs to do. And actually, from a design point of view, means that we don't have to then spend our time discovering the things that we already should know about whether or not our service is working for users. So is it easy to find, for example? So I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I am going to talk about one which I think is particularly relevant to the moments that we're facing at the moment, which is actually around encouraging the right behaviours of users and staff. And so, you know, thinking back to that example of Navient and the 7-minute rule, it's quite easy to see just how much of an effect a really poor incentivization has on our users, and not just our individual users, but society at large. You know, if we encourage everyone who's answering a phone to answer that phone and hang up within 7 minutes, we're going to get some very strange effects within our services. And we talk a lot about KPIs, I think, when we talk about service design. And most of what you'll find if you kind of Google it sort of looks a bit like this. And the problem with a lot of service KPIs is they either measure the wrong thing. So they often kind of measure tasks, not the actual outcomes, or they are so complicated that no one really pays any attention to them. And, you know, I'm sure, as Clive will have experienced as himself as well, it's absolutely pointless having a KPI that no one pays any attention to. You may as well not have it. And so I want to talk a bit quickly about an example of kind of bad incentivization. And if we can all cast our minds back to way back when in the 1990s, Tony Blair, the then Prime Minister of the UK, was going for his second re-election. And fashion was a very different thing than it was today, as you can see by those excellent lapels. But Tony Blair campaigned very heavily on a particular area of policy, which is around healthcare. And there was a lot of really, really bad news stories at the time around people not being able to get access to see their GP or their general practitioner. And so they weren't able to actually see a doctor within a week. And that was a real kind of headline for Tony Blair. And it was causing a huge amount of problems for him in his campaign. What he did was essentially to, in order to kind of stop that from happening before his re-election, he put in place a order to all of the doctor surgeries to cut the waiting time to see a doctor to 48 hours. And this was a promise that his government was going to kind of meet, to make sure that you could see a doctor within 48 hours of needing to see one. And this all seemed like an excellent idea until one moment when Tony Blair appeared on Newsnight, which is a kind of very famous UK political programme. And he was kind of asked a question by an audience member, and an audience member asking a question that he didn't expect. And it was a lady called Diana Church, and she asked the question that, I can't make an appointment within to see my doctor within a week's time, because you're only allowed to make an appointment within 48 hours beforehand. And then when I try to get through on the day, I can't get through. And I think what Diana's question kind of proved was that actually there's something going wrong with this KPI. Something happened that didn't quite work out. And Tony Blair's response to this was absolutely priceless. And you can actually watch the clip on YouTube where he sort of turned to the presenter and said, well, I think this is an isolated case. We'll investigate this afterwards, of course. And the presenter did not let him get away with it and asked the rest of the audience if they had experienced the same, to which most of the people in the audience raised their hands. And in fact, what it shows is that actually, rather than cutting the waiting time to see a doctor to 48 hours, what Tony Blair's government had actually done was make it so that doctor surgeries felt like they needed to conform to that target so much that they had made it impossible for anyone to book an appointment earlier than 48 hours, which meant that, of course, within those 48 hours, everyone was trying to book an appointment all at the same time for all of the same dates. And Tony's response to this was equally priceless of, well, obviously it shouldn't work like that. But it does work like that. And it turns out what gets measured gets done in a service. So if you measure a target around time, people will try and meet that target regardless of what the outcome is for users. Really, when it comes to targets, we should be measuring the outcome that we want to achieve, not the task that we want to get done. But it's not just KPIs and incentives, there's business models, or business modes, sorry, misspelling, and the interactions and heuristics around our services as well that all incentivize us to work in a certain way. So when we're talking about incentives, really the most important thing is to remember what we're trying to achieve, to make sure that we focus on balancing the behaviours that we expect of our users and the ones we expect of our staff and organisation, and to make sure that the outcome that we want to achieve is encoded in every layer of the organisation, from the business model to the staff targets, as we can see in that example of Anne and Navian earlier on. But I think the most important thing to kind of take away from this is that you can only design something if you acknowledge it exists. And as service designers, our job is to help people to get to this point where they have this service literacy, that they understand and can see services as things that can be designed, that they understand what makes a good service, and we can explain that really clearly to them in non-patronizing ways, frustrating as it is sometimes, and that we help people to make that commitment to designing services consciously rather than accidentally. So you can buy the book, it's out, it's very jazzy, it's very bright, it's available on Amazon and also independent bookstores. There is also a free scale which you can use on Google Docs and on Miro that helps you to assess the quality of your service and to benchmark it over time. You can access it here. And there is also, I started doing masterclasses in how to design services that work. So there are 2 different courses. There's 1-day masterclass for anyone new to service design or doing it as part of another role. And there is a 2-day one for people who are experienced designers who are basically looking to increase their kind of impact within organizations. So you can access those here at Good Services /masterclasses. There are also posters, which Clive has just received. They are also very jazzy, and you can get them here. And that is the end of my pitch. And you can contact me here if you want to talk about Good Services. So thank you very much, and good luck to all of you. I'm excited about seeing all of the rest of your fantastic work this evening.
Thank you, Lou. Absolutely inspiring, as always. Of course, Executive Education at the RCA in Service Design by Clive Grenier is also available.
I'll take you up on that, Clive.
As usual, inspirational talk. I really love your service literacy. We talk a lot about design literacy. We'll come back and hopefully have some time for a bit of a round table at the end, where basically the panelists will just speak to each other and we'll watch and take some questions. Richard Haynes, a good friend of the course, has just also commented that 7 minutes is how long GPs have to speak to their patients, of course. Yep. So there's something about 7 minutes going on there.
Like
so that question. Right, we're going to move now to our next presentation. I'm going to bring my screen back up. And I am in a second here when I've got the right slide in place, so bear with. Here we go. Whoops. Sorry, everybody. There we go. That's the right one. Fantastic. Great. Kieran, are you on your marks?
I'm ready.
Fantastic. Great. I'm going to go to your first slide.
Thanks, Clive. Hi, I'm Kieran, and my work started from an interest in services that function in moments of extreme pressure. So I chose to look into the London Fire Brigade, especially as recent events have substantially reshaped our perception of risk from fire. Next slide, please. I spent time with firefighters, learning how they train, what processes they follow, and I was shown how basic some of their systems are and how often they rely on pen and paper. Something that really came across time and time again is their drive to serve and protect the public. I started to become really interested in how I could add to the campaigns and services that they already have to work in line with their budgets with an aim to ease some of the pressure off the fire brigade and reimagine their relationship with the public. Next slide, please. I ran different simulations, getting people to act out what they would do in a fire scenario or explain what they'd done in past events when a fire had occurred in their apartment blocks. I found using games like The Sims 2 or movie character cards made it more fun and inviting for people to engage with. For what was potentially quite an anxiety-inducing topic during a really anxious time in a pandemic. It proved to be a really great platform to immerse people in different user journeys, and they engaged in conversations in different reflective states, having embodied a sim. I learned that people hadn't considered what to do in a fire before, they lacked familiarity on best steps, and most went against the London Fire Brigade's guidance and tried to fight the fire, potentially putting themselves in harm's way. Next slide, please. Learning from the experiences of people in fire scenarios, it became really clear that while we have a huge amount of trust and respect for the London Fire Brigade, next slide, when it comes to our fire safety systems, this just isn't the case. This can be seen in how people don't read fire safety guidance, claim they would never stay put, and when they hear a fire alarm, they tend to ignore it. Next slide, please. The impact of this is people finding themselves in a moment of panic if a fire occurs in their apartment. They may never have used a fire extinguisher or know where to start, and people described that it was really hard to think clearly and logically in this state. Next slide, please. For others in the apartment, while they may have first dismissed the alarm, the constant ringing can leave them feeling on edge. Without updated information, they can be left not sure what's happening and with what they're supposed to be doing, which can lead to mistakes. Next slide, please. And for many people, these scenarios led to unintended moments, such as checking the hallway to see if there's any sign of trouble. And they might catch a neighbor doing the same thing and have a brief chat, sometimes for the first time. And what I found really interesting is that these behaviors are often overlooked and hadn't been captured in previous designs. Next slide, please. So is there another layer that we can add to the existing fire safety system to aid these moments and try and prevent them? A key change that I'm proposing with Common Ground is to shift from each household individually considering how they might prevent and react to a fire alarm in an apartment. Next slide. To the residents recognizing that their collective actions impact the ability for fire services to do their work, so coming together in how they respond. By changing the scale at which we consider fire safety, it allows for better prevention and an organized response. Next slide, please. There are 5 main components with Common Ground: additional support, advocates, rituals, and tools. These reach residents at different stages of them living in their apartment, from an initial fire safety demo to give confidence with a potential stay put policy, to closing the feedback loop if a fire does occur. These design components independently bring value, but they're strengthened when they're implemented together. Next slide, please. So to give an example of this, testing our fire alarms is something that we all know we should do, but we often forget to. By having a building-wide ritual whereby all residents test their alarms when the clocks change twice a year in spring and autumn, with support from advocates if needed, it helps remind people of what they should be doing at times when they actually start to expect it to come. Next slide, please. And in addition, on this day, which is often lands on a Sunday, advocates share activities around fire safety and prevention the residents can engage in, either within their home or with other neighbours. So the example is showing some people testing if a door is hot on the other side, which might alert them that there's a fire. The aim being to change the format in which this knowledge is shared and encourage people to practice in order that it can help people or help to reach people who may not have reached it otherwise, either due to language barriers or it just not being something on their radar. Next slide, please. And when exploring the different patterns between household and fires, it became clear that they're repeatable. And I see this as something that can inform which activities to run. So kind of throughout my work, I've started to compile a pattern library for fire safety. And as part of the work that I'm going to continue to do, I'm looking at different ways that this can start to bring value. So the example shows when you overuse your laptop and it starts to overheat and it kind of sounds like a rocket taking off. In the example shown, that could actually lead to a battery starting to warp, and which could be a potentially hazardous scenario. Next slide, please. So if you want to hear about other things I've kind of designed within Common Ground, this is very much like a snippet of what I've come up with, or you want to learn more about my research methods, please feel free to reach out because I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieran. And just to repeat, once we've been through everybody, they will be available on the Zoom links we're going to give you later on to have a quick drop-in chat and register your appreciation. And thank you, Kieran. It's a fabulous project. Really enjoyed it. So, time to introduce Andre Lopez Josange. We've met Andre only quite recently Visa have been working with two of our students, Zuiban and Jay Sun, on the project on urban moments that I mentioned. It's been a terrific relationship, and we're very grateful for it. So it seemed only right to ask Andre to come and give his picture. He's the reasonably new global head of design for Visa. Give his picture about the impact of design on financial services. So welcome, Andre. Thank you very much for taking part. Now, thank you. Can we hear you? Are you on mute? And can we see you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are. Phew, you have me going.
There we go.
Yeah, there you are. Great.
And can you see me? Okay, good.
We can.
And you can see the presentation. Okay,
and
good.
Good to go.
Okay, that's the drill we have nowadays in COVID times. Okay. Hello, everybody. Like Clive said, I'm here just to talk about the visual impact or the visible impact of design in financial services. Like Clive mentioned, I'm now the VP of Europe for design, and I've been in this role just since last summer, so it's nearly a year. So half my time I've been in an office, and half my time I've been locked at home with my two daughters and my beautiful wife. So, first of all, I just want to say, yesterday I was invited to the VIP night, and hold on a second, there's something here, and I can't get rid of it. Can you see the panelist screen? Okay, good. There we go. Okay,
yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay, great. Sorry. So last night I was lucky enough to come in, and I went through the whole presentation. I met a couple of the students. There's some really good projects there. And I just want to say congratulations to everybody. It's impressive. Like a good breakout and see if you surf, it's really good to see that every wave that's coming behind is better than the wave that's just gone through. And believe me, I'm many waves ahead, so I'm that old. But it was really good. And then when Clive came to me, he said, listen, we want to do this presentation. I'd like to see the impact of design. So I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks, and I've just thought about 9 things. And I just want to run through those 9 things quickly of what I think has been the impact in financial services. First and foremost, I would say that the biggest impact that design or service design has given financial services is empathy. All of a sudden, we are now understanding people. And I've been playing at this game for nearly 20 years. And it's unbelievable that now in the last 5 years, people are starting to understand. They're starting to listen, which sometimes we think anyone can do, but it's not as easy as they think. And when I say listen, it's listen to what our customers want, listen to what people need, and really understand what they want. And the goal really at the end of the day is, to make them happy, to find a solution that incites a riot, to break that emotion, to get something out there. And we're learning now. And a company like Visa has had to see how little incumbents and lots of these neobanks and challenger services have come in, and they're very dynamic, and the way they're doing it. And why are they working? Because they're now looking from outside in and not looking from inside out, which was what probably happened before in large corporations like Visa. You would think of it, you would come up with a product, you would say, this is amazing, let's take it out, without even consulting or without even thinking. Whereas now it's completely different. It's, okay, what do they need? What is it? What do we have to do? All right, do we have the capabilities to serve it? And then to the, if we look at it, we talk about digital transformation, that's gone. And it's definitely gone with COVID, because I think everybody's done it in 8 weeks. But now we're in an experience transformation. We're not talking product anymore. We're talking experience. We're going on to that extra level. And first and foremost, if you think about it, another big impact is they're now starting to understand that design is a language. It's not that fairy dust. It's not that icing on a cake. It is a powerful business tool. It's a language that businesses have to speak to gain that competitive advantage. We help create those artifacts, build those prototypes, and create that understanding and set up that conversation, which was never there before, and all that richness that comes through it. If we look at one of the greats, he's been saying it for like nearly 30 to 40 years. Good design is a language. Yet it only seems as if in the last 5 years, everyone has all of a sudden woken up from this dream and kind of said, well, let's do this. and it's a language to communicate to our customers, a language to understand them. So, and one of my meta projects at Visa right now is just that, is to create those conditions, to put those processes in place, even though those who know me, I am very process averse, and build that culture. So to let design work and let design do what it has to do. And that is very difficult. That is very, very difficult in a big company. You're getting a lot of fights, you get in a lot of trouble, you're not the most popular person. But, if you're willing to lose your job over it, you won't have any issue. Another one of the big insights is focus. Up until recently, it was all about just turn a banking app or turn a financial app into the new television remote control. Just stuff it with functionality. And customers don't want that. And you've got to do, things step by step. And you've really got to, if we think about the late, great Milton Glaser, he always said just enough is more. It's not more is more, or it's not even less is more, it's just enough. What do certain services need? Just give them enough of that service and that'll be enough for them. Functionality no longer cuts it, no longer. But also, the reality is out there, and this brutal truth, and I think this is what's made everybody kind of now understand and jump on this bandwagon and believe and have confidence in what we do. And we have these co-conspirators now in this because the blood is in the water. The big banks, they're being shaken up, they're slow. They don't have the right services. They don't know how to talk to their customers. It's just I always say challengers and neobanks, the only thing they've done, the services were there before. They've just taken them and they just repackaged them and they've made them easy to understand. They've made them easy to just consume. And they've just broken down. Just yesterday, I got some, the latest T's and C's by Monzo. And I'm sure if there's any Monzo users out there, you've all seen them. You can read them and you can understand them, which if you look at, banks I've worked with before, you wouldn't even think about reading them because it would take you the weekend and still you wouldn't understand anything. So it's just that whole shift, of what the reality is and how to make things consumable and how to make things normal and how to talk to people like people has just, brought this on, and the hard truths is, we've been hearing it again, going back into history, and I always say, look back. Banking is necessary, but banks are not, and every time you can imagine, I go into a meeting and I lay this out on one of the big banks, you can just imagine what their faces are when they look at me. It's, what do you mean? Well, we're seeing it right now. There's 47 challenger bank services here that are really doing it, and especially in a country like the UK. I came from Spain last year. I lived in Madrid for 20 years and it's not as advanced, and you come here and it's just a free-for-all and it's just amazing. But, if you think about it, design is slowly also becoming invisible, and it's making both the physical in the financial field and both the virtual invisible. And if you look at the physical, branches are just dying. Nobody goes to a branch anymore. They're just a big thing that just sucks up money and time. Whereas, and the virtual, that too as well, if you think about where we are and where we're going, they're slowly disappearing. I always get the question and they always say to me, what is the best payment experience for you? And I always say it's Uber. You just get out of the car. You don't do anything else. You don't have to whip an app. You don't have to click through anything. You just get up and go, and that's where we're going. We've had the 2Ds, the 3Ds, the 4Ds. I always say now we're at the advent of the 0D. Things that just float, things that are just out there, things that just enable us to do things. And this means that we're going to have to rework how we think. We're going to have to start from scratch, which again, that's what design does. You hit a wall, you adapt and you go over it, round it, through it, but you get to the other side. But, if you also look at another impact, design has helped financial institutions, financial services be cool, be fashionable. If I put this up, everybody knows what this service is. You probably would do even without the minute, intro logo I've just put in the middle. If I just showed you the pink, as if I'd showed you the fuchsia from Monzo and probably show you the bright green from Starling, you all know these services because, you feel good about using them because they're positive experiences. They give you just enough of what you need. I always had this big argument with a large financial institution in Spain, and their goal was to get users on the banking services as much as possible. And I was like, you know what? The less they're on it, the better. The better they can go in, do something and spend their time on something really interesting rather than financial services. That's the aim of the game. It's just make it invisible, just, put it out there. And, these services, they give them that. It's really easy now. Installments was difficult. It was clumsy. And all of a sudden now installments is cool. Everybody's doing pay later. It's easy, just pay later. But also one thing I always say is, for good design to work, it's got to be dangerous. I also, like I mentioned previously, and I think I mentioned when I had the luxury of talking to some students at the RCA, I think we're getting too dogmatic with process. We're going a bit overboard, and we had the Six Sigmas before where everything was safe and everybody had a parachute. And one of the big impacts is telling the banks and telling the financial institutions, it's good to be a little bit dangerous. It's good to take leaps of faith. We sometimes, you've just got to go out on that limb. We always think about, the research, and research is key and function, and function and super important. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes you've got to go with your gut. Sometimes you've got to go against that research. You've got to be bold. You've got to go out there, and getting banks and financial institutions to understand that. The little ones get it. They go out and they try anything. But the large ones, of course, they're slow to this. And that is an impact they're going to have to go through. And it comes to the whole data thing, which is all out there. And, everyone is talking, we're data driven. And I seriously believe, I think one of the big impacts is we've got to be data informed to enable us to be dangerous, enable us to, just go out on a limb sometimes, take this. You take that data, you consume it, you understand it, and then you make a decision. Do you go with it? Yes, you can. Do you not go with it purposely? You can as well. So, it's sometimes you've got to check your intuition. It's something we're losing. We're getting too machine-like. And, I've seen companies just live off pure data. And they're doing well, but they're not going to break it and shake it. So, this is something really important. And it goes down to the model of, when you get this data, what does that data become? It becomes information, and then it becomes knowledge and becomes wisdom. This is nothing new. You've probably seen it in a pyramid or you've seen it in any way, but that's what it is. And when you get that wisdom, you can then decide what you do with that. You don't have to follow the rules. And then lastly, one thing I think, there's something really important and an impact that's going to happen is the responsibility. The design's got to be more responsible. We've got to do a little bit better. And I say this because you probably heard recently there was a financial institution and people are now buying shares and buying stocks, and it's the new, Animal Crossing. It's the new game, and they're pumping the money, and all of a sudden, this poor soul in the States, he found himself 700,000 K under, and he took his life. And then if you think about it, is it the financial institution's fault? Of course not. But they gamified it. Their designers were so good. They made it so addictive. They made it that you just want to go on and on. And I think this is a moment we've got to reflect. And I think this is a moment we've got to ask ourselves, what are the questions? We've always had three questions. What are you trying to improve and what are you trying to make? Question one. Question two was always who you're trying to improve it or make it for. And then question three is how you're going to go about being successful. Those were always the three questions. But I ask you all to have one more question from now on whenever you come up to a project and lay it out there. And it's who might be hurt by the result now or in the future of what you're actually making or what you're actually improving. Just slot that question in there. You're going to go against company culture. I just had a meeting two days ago, which wasn't that popular. But it's a question we have to ask ourselves from now on. And, like I said before, like a good break, I'm coming towards the end of my time. But with this new wave of designers, you're going to do better. You're going to be better than us. So ask yourselves these questions and please ask yourselves the fourth one. And with that, thank you very much. It's been thank you for listening. And like I said, we can do better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre. Fantastic presentation. Really appreciate you joining us today. Lots of lovely things in there that we will chew over in time. But I think I loved your just enough. We often try and discover that minimum design intervention or the one thing you do. And I think And we also worry that they're going to spend our whole lives just fixing the basics, but sometimes it is just about just enough, isn't it? And also, I think, you know, whether it's Lou, yourself, to some extent me as well, we've all been pioneering trying to get this service design into places like banks, into places like government. But I do think the door is opening. As you say, they're speaking the language now, and the future for the students, I think, is really positive.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let's have another presentation. Let's keep the ball going, and then we can get to Ellie after our final student presentation. So let me share my screen and welcome Pina and Alessandro to talk to us about their extremely timely project called Household Health. Hello, Pina. Hello, Alessandro. Are you there?
Hi.
Great. Good to see you. Good to see you.
I'm glad you've got
decent broadband now.
Yeah, we do. Should be sorted out.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, over to you.
Hi, I'm Alessandro.
And hello, I'm Pinia, and we did a project together with Ale.
So thank you for attending the webinar and to the speaker for the really interesting talks. We will give you a sneak peek of our project, Household Health, and what it is about, and we hope you're going to enjoy it. So next slide, please, Clive. Both Pina and I are interested in systemic problems and the healthcare sector, so we decided to work together. But when we heard the first news about the international spread of coronavirus, we wanted to explore if there was something that we could do as designer to help. Next slide, please. So we were interested in urban living and public health challenges, and we decided to look at how the COVID-19 impacted the health in the home environment. Next slide, please. And after talking to a lot of different types of household through a WhatsApp probe, we understood that flat shares are a unique health environment, as well as the most affordable living option in big cities. Thinking about London, there are 206,000 flat shares housing not related adults, and mainly in their 20s. Next slide, please. So living in a shared flat doesn't mean you only share spaces, but what we learned from this pandemic is that individuals' behaviors have an impact on other people's health. And this might not be just the physical health, but the mental health as well. This topic is much broader than just looking at the pandemic, and this is what we call household health. Next slide, please. So we heard many stories of flat sharers coping with a new way of living, which has caused arguments and poor atmosphere. Many people struggle to feel safe in their own home, resulting for most of them to move back to their own countries or to their parents. From letting agencies, we heard that they had seen 25% of rooms being left empty, and the difficulty of setting agreed co-living rules for cleaning and hygiene has always been there, but the topic has been pushed to the surface together with the fear of getting infected with COVID-19. Next slide, please.
Together we thought, how might we revive the feeling of safety in shared homes? Next slide, please. We ran a co-creation workshop with a team from Public Health England and turned those ideas into a website prototype. Ideas to help the flatmates live together, such as a home risk profile and health rules, were solutions for everyday health. For emergencies, we talked about action plans and a shared medicine cabinet for emergency preparation. Next slide, please. From all the discussions we had with tenants, we realized that what was missing weren't the tools for co-living, but actually a way of agreeing on what to do as a collective. The people who didn't have a close relationship with their flatmates struggled the most. Next slide, please. We realized that before agreeing, there needs to be a discussion, and we decided to design a ritual for the early weeks of living together to kick off that culture. The discussion topics we co-created with tenants. Next slide, please. So let us introduce you to Household Health with a short video on the next slide.
Household Health, create a healthier way of sharing a home. Moving in with new flatmates is a process of agreeing on a way of living that accommodates everyone's health needs. The rapid spread of COVID-19 has led many to realize that the house is as safe as the least cautious tenant, but often the most important discussions are the hardest ones. Household health helps flat shares agree on actions of living together that takes everyone's health into consideration. The service provides a digitally facilitated ritual for the early weeks of living together, allowing the tenant to sit down for a chat. They are provided with a structure to get to know each other and set expectations for co-living, commit to everyday health actions as a collective, and prepare for health emergencies and possible illness. Understanding what to do and knowing everyone is committed to keeping each other healthy will help tenants to feel safe in shared homes again.
Next slide, please. So with our project, we're able to build working prototypes for both the app and the cabinet and test and iterate thoroughly. We received feedback of the need for this service from both agencies and tenants. And researching this pandemic while living it wasn't for sure easy for both of us. We needed to come up with new tools for user research and prototyping in a digital world. But this really allowed us to get out of our comfort zone and really push ourselves to think creatively. And next slide, please. So we wanted to leave you all with one thought after this short pitch. We're asking you, imagine you need to move in with strangers today. How safe would you feel without having a discussion about health specifically? And we're happy to tell you more in case you have any questions or thoughts about our project. We're happy to hear any feedback.
Thank you so much, Lydia and Alessandro. I think another example of how students have pivoted during COVID to learn the new techniques, develop pioneering techniques really of user research, but it hasn't stopped them, absolutely not. And in this case, a project that was about something very different when it started, become incredibly timely and continuously so as we go into the future. So I hope you've enjoyed those three presentations. A reminder that after we've heard from Ellie and had a little chat with all the people on the seminar, we'll be sending you links so that you can go and talk to all those students. But we'll get to that in a minute. But I'd like to welcome, please, Ellie. Ellie, are you there?
Hello, Clive. Hi,
you're
everyone.
You're visible and audible. This is fantastic. I'm so pleased you've come to join us. Ellie Runcie, Head of Design at the BBC. And Ellie and I worked together at the Design Council previously, so we know very, very well how difficult it can be actually to make sure design has impact. And possibly you'll be talking about those times as well, Ellie. But welcome to this seminar. Over to you.
Thanks, Clive. And I'm really excited. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this evening. I haven't missed an MA service design show at the RCA in all the 8 years that the programme's been running. So it's amazing that I could be here tonight as well, even if it's virtual, to join everybody. And again, I just want to join everyone else tonight who's already said this, but huge congratulations to all of you, the graduates on this 2020 programme. It's been really inspiring to see some of the projects, and I'm really interested to get to know some of them a little bit more. A few have certainly resonated with me. So thanks for sharing those highlights earlier, Clive. I'm really excited for you all. I thought when I originally spoke to Clive and Carolyn about tonight, I thought, oh, I suppose I should really talk about the work I've been doing at the BBC. I've been at the BBC for just over a year now. But actually, I was thinking of what it must be like for you right now graduating. And I just wanted to reflect really this evening what it's been like, my own design journey, I suppose, over the last 20 years or just over 20 years, because I reflected that the talk and the theme of the festival is visible impact. And I thought, well, I've just spent the last 20 years trying to demonstrate and make more visible the impact of design. And I'm continuing to do that at the BBC. So I want to share, I suppose, my design story over that time with you. But there are some principles all the way through this that I'll end with, because I think a lot of the principles that I've picked up over the last 25 years are more important now than ever. So be confident in the steps that you're all going to take after this evening. So my first point is to say this is all a work in progress. 25 years, are you kidding me? But it's a constant process really to make, and a constant challenge to make design and the impact of design particularly visible. The work I've done in this time has been proving that to businesses, the public sector, and really learning a lot about the approach to designing and the importance of design leadership actually, to help people make sense of design for themselves if they are not designers. And you will work with many non-designers in your career as design leaders. And I think it's one of the most important things to understand how you inclusively enable people to understand and own design and make better design decisions. That is our responsibility in the roles that we have. So really, just in terms of industry or business, it's hard to believe this, but just as I was starting this work, I used to work for the Design Council, I should say, before I moved on to the BBC. And I was staggered to, at this time, actually, Clive and I were working together, and Neil Gridley, who I know is also a tutor on this brilliant programme, to find that a survey we did found 60% of businesses in the UK did not see design as integral. And of course, fast forward today, there are, the top 5 consulting firms like McKinsey, there are brilliant design firms like InVision, who are doing their own international surveys that prove that we've come a long way. 3/4 of businesses, not just in the UK, actually globally, really understand that design has an integral role to play. The challenge now is just they don't quite maybe understand at what level of the business design might play a role. Still may be seen very much as a visual thing unless it's a strategic asset. The work that I was involved with 20 years ago was to say, well, go out there and prove that design has a more strategic role to play then. Go and demonstrate that it isn't just, visible impact isn't just through visual and aesthetic, it's actually about strategy, it's knowing what the problem is and what the outcome is you're trying to achieve. And I was really lucky that alongside the findings of that research, the chairman at the time of the Design Council, George Cox, was asked to do a review of creativity in the UK. And I'm sure some of you on the programme have come across that report. It was very influential. And it was the beginning of a 10-year or just over a 10-year design journey. And it was really a service design journey at its heart, because we had to go out there and in very small, careful steps demonstrate, starting off with very few companies, individually working with them, understanding what they were trying to achieve and where they needed to be. And that work informed the development of the Double Diamond. Those very early days between 2001 and 2004 helped inform the Double Diamond, which was launched in 2004. So I feel it's really important to say that even the nature of a tool like the Double Diamond was a collaboration with many, many people involved over many years. But over 10 years, 5,000 businesses were supported through this approach of very much working with them through, I would say, the first diamond of the Double Diamond, which is helping businesses to take a step back, because there's so much pressure, and especially now in all organizations, to make the best possible decisions they can under pressure. And at the time, we had government investment to help those businesses make better design decisions. It was quite a large program with a team of 100 people working across the country and 9 funding partners. So over time, it was really critical that we actually came out of something really robust. And Lou talked about measurement, and we had to think about measurement every step of the way. How are we going to come up with a consistent approach to do this across so many businesses? So the Double Diamond is used obviously now globally in many different ways. We had a particular way of using it at the Design Council at the time. And really, I would say in that first diamond, you've got to have a really careful, structured approach. It isn't just designers experimenting, it's actually designers leading senior people and others, customers, stakeholders, all sorts of partners through that first diamond in a very important stage of understanding what's the root cause of the problem we have today. Let's make sure we really see the root cause, because if we're going to invest money to develop ideas that will deliver better outcomes for our business, we might use our profits to do that. We need to be sure by the time we've reached that middle stage of the Double Diamond that we're going to be moving forward in the right direction. So it's really important as designers that we're doing that work in the first diamond in a really rigorous way. 7 years into designing demand, we ourselves came under further pressure at the Design Council to make sure we were actually delivering impact from that programme. So we went back and we thought, well, we'll have to go back to all 5,000 businesses and keep tracking them and their progress. We can't just go back overnight and do a survey and say, here are the stats. These stats are probably well known by now, but we were staggered at the time that because we were so careful in that first diamond, many businesses were able to put forward better design decisions and briefs because of that. And therefore, we were able to measure the impact of design on their businesses because of the investment in design that they made, and because we'd carefully figured out how we were going to help them measure that. So we were able to confidently say, for every £1 they spent on design, they were able to make £20 return in turnover, £4 in net operating profit. But as I said, that's not good enough. You need to keep touch with how progress is being made in the projects or businesses that you're working with. And so more recently, in fact, it was 2017, colleagues at the time at the Design Council went back to those businesses. We have been through rough economic times during this whole period. We are going through it right now and some, but I feel that, and interestingly, the Design Council today has actually launched an impact report. It's starting to really show that those businesses are continuing to survive and thrive and trade compared to national control groups of businesses. We wanted to make sure that we weren't being biased in our own views of the businesses that we work with. So it's really important that we work with an independent economic partner to do that work at the time. But also businesses are growing. They're not just surviving, they're growing. And that's the point. That innovation approach, that first diamond approach can actually unlock new thinking and help businesses take completely different directions than they otherwise would have gone in. And that is contributing to their ongoing survival and growth despite really tough times. Really quickly then, that was sort of us working, the programs I was running looking at individual businesses. It took a long time. And then we realized that the innovation now has to happen in ecosystems. It's no longer about individual businesses, it's about how supply chains perform. So we needed to kind of step up a gear and practice what we preach in those ecosystems. So we worked with a few aerospace companies, and the challenge there was saying, can we demonstrate the value of design, working with the most strategic suppliers to customers in a sector that is so risk averse? It's a great place to start. It's probably the hardest place to start. How can we integrate design thinking and innovation into aerospace supply chains? But we were up for that challenge. And again, same approach, but in a different context. This was far more about a collaboration, bringing customers like Rolls-Royce together with their tier one suppliers to collaboratively understand what the challenges are ahead for the sector, let alone for a company like Rolls-Royce, and how the supply chain can work collaboratively to help address those challenges and actually safeguard and protect and actually drive innovation through that sector as a result. Because companies like Rolls-Royce, they outsource so much design now. Innovation has to come from their supply chain. It can't just come from a big customer like Rolls-Royce. What we were able to do from that work was actually pioneer some research working with other aerospace, major aerospace companies, and really find out more about some of the challenges that they have with design. And we branched that out to working with automotive businesses as well. But what was really interesting was that then impact here is actually here in a narrative, in a piece of research. And we're actually sharing early findings with people to show, the changes that would need to be made in a supply chain in order for innovation to thrive. It's interesting how, some themes emerging there that were touched on earlier, that service literacy was one of the things that came through loud and clear. Rolls-Royce is a very service-led business. It is one of the first companies in the world, going way back to the 60s, to introduce the concept of service through its Power by the Hour strategy. But their suppliers were actually thriving in a product literate world. A very heavy engineering driven world. So that service literacy was something that was a big change for them. And also proximity to users. The further away you are from your customers, the harder it is to really understand how you can innovate and drive change. So all these findings were really important to them. I think the biggest thing was the bravery of companies like Rolls-Royce in sharing their roadmaps that are looking so many decades out with their suppliers to enable them to have a chance of innovating. I think that's the biggest shift. I don't know that companies like that have actually truly mastered that, but I think that's the opportunity ahead. We were able to share and influence a big piece of policy around aerospace sector 2 years ago, working with the government because of the work we did. But then notching it up a gear further, how can industry start to tackle societal challenges, working collaboratively with their counterparts? So maybe not quite with their competitors, but certainly with organizations that have the same shared problem as they do across different sectors. So we set up an experiment really a few years ago to see if we could create a marketplace to foster new ideas and thinking for entrepreneurs, investors, big businesses, local authorities to come together to say, well, how could we actually help a problem like helping people to live independently in their own homes for longer? How can we inspire the UK to come up with some ideas that actually can help to tackle some quite systemic problems in the UK? So the fund that we ran, and I think it still runs at the Design Council, was Spark. What was really interesting is over a 4-year period, that became a scalable innovation platform, and many innovators were funded and supported to accelerate ideas to market. But not only that, we wanted those ideas to be market making. So we wanted to track, can their ideas actually bring further funding into the system so that those life enhancing ideas can be accelerated to market. It's so hard, especially now, for innovators to get through that so-called valley of death. So that fund as well, just to make it even more challenging for ourselves, we wanted it to be self-sustaining, the principle being that if I'm an entrepreneur that succeeds, my idea gets to market, my success, I can make a small return back to the fund because it will help someone else. And at the time, that was quite novel, but we received the first return to the fund apparently 2 years ago, which is very exciting, and it continues to grow. Some of the ideas, they range from phytoponics, so looking at new environments to grow food and think about food systems. This gentleman, Matt, he's beautifully modelling a shirt that does itself up if you're suffering from arthritic conditions. You don't need, you fiddle with the buttons to do the shirt up. Rocket, which is a global award-winning device that helps babies and little ones, calms them down if they're having trouble settling in their cots or their prams. And for diabetics, a really simple and pain-free device to take your insulin test. So brilliant ideas, really hard to cut through in the market. So that's business, and a few examples there of how visible impact has come through. In the public sector, it's much challenging. The work that we've done over time, all of us, I think, including Lou, I'm sure the work through GDS, has been how do you cut through in local government and in public services more generally to improve services. We worked, or the visible impact, I suppose, with many different service challenges up and down the country. This image here being a hospital in London, where they were serving it was a pharmacy service, which was really actually under pressure. And this was quite a brave move to actually think about not just how can we redesign the service in terms of the flows of customers that they need to serve every day, but actually how can we set this service up as a successful business for the future that can actually make profit that goes back into the hospital. So the Whittington pharmacy was actually redesigned, not just from a service point of view, but from a business model point of view, successfully contributing money back to the Whittington Trust year on year. So I'm going to move on just because I'm conscious of time. But again, we move on, I think, the shift for you and for us all now is not just about service design, it's actually systems thinking and systems design. How do we actually help tackle major challenges collaboratively? For example, making life better for people in later life. And a programme that I worked on more recently, I was involved with, thinking about how do you bring health and care leaders, public service providers, carers, people in later life together with entrepreneurs and activists in the community. No mean feat. But actually what we found was ways of doing that again, back to the first diamond, and I suppose moving the double diamond on at this point, which we did, was this isn't about a methodology or a process anymore. This is about us as designers leading people through a very difficult, challenge, to better understand a challenge. They're all coming at this from different lived experience, which is very relevant to what we're all going through now, and everybody will see the problem in a different way. So how do we facilitate and carefully manage that process and that dialogue to get to a point where we're all actually cognizant of the problem and the root cause, but we're all actually engaged and bought into the ideas that need to go forward from that? And actually, again, from that first diamond, 6 innovation briefs came out that became national and are actually running now as successful startups in the southwest of England. But also programs like this have actually influenced government policy. Again, aspects of living independently and having affordable, well-designed housing plays a critical role in that. So to finish, I think it's interesting just to reflect where design has come in that time. I think the Double Diamond started off very much in a product literate world, and the framework for innovation, which was the evolution of the Double Diamond over a 10-year period, was the shift between product to services and systems thinking, and actually how as designers we need to be leaders of many different people with lived experience of a problem and taking them through that process to deliver visible impact for themselves, and it's designing with and not for. And so what I think from all the work that I've done in this time, and what I think is now more important than ever, and reflecting on the work we're doing at the BBC, is first and foremost empathy. So that's already come up, but really understanding what people are living through right now and being very cognizant of that. I think it's something that the best designers have naturally. It's something that can be brought to bear right now for organizations. Inclusion, the good design process is naturally, should be inclusive. We shouldn't be trying to solve problems for people. We should be involving people in the process of understanding the problem better. We should be designing with purpose. This is something that's very relevant for me right now. At a time where organizations are going to question the value of everything they're doing, design, it's more important to say has a purpose in any organization that you go on to work for, and to be very clear about that purpose and how it can be a strategic driver for change and not just an asset or a resource to help things look better in your organization. To be relevant, the needs of people are changing rapidly for any service, including the BBC. Relevance is one of the biggest challenges, but one of the biggest opportunities for design. Openness, we've just seen through COVID, data, we haven't got time for anyone to be the first in any game here. The more we can share data openly and other ways of working will help to openly innovate and come up with better ideas that improve lives faster. Leadership, I've touched on this a lot, but I think it's really important that we aren't just seeing ourselves as designers, but we are leaders, confidently holding a space for people to talk about challenges. And finally, evidence. It is important. We do need to think about these things, but it can just start with stories and just small steps. So that is a nutshell of the last 25 years. And I just want to say it's been great to hear your stories tonight, and best of luck to everybody.
Thank you, Ellie. Fantastic story. We had Ellie. Actually, I'd like to invite Lou, if you're still around, Lou, and Andre to make yourself visible again. We're running a bit over. I'm not going to apologize. You've had 3 absolutely fantastic talks. I think you touched on 2 things there, Ellie, around system thinking, which is we're really embracing that, because you can't change a system without really understanding how it's designed, how it operates. And that's a new territory that service design really needs to go. And leadership. We often describe ourselves as facilitators, but actually we're realizing we need to be leaders. So listen, in the short amount of time we've got, and I do want to at least share with you the links to the students' work. And if anyone's got time to go and talk to them, we would be, of course, delighted about that. But what I'd love to ask all 3 of you is, what advice would you give for the students who are about to graduate? Just that one question would be really, I think, helpful to everybody here, especially in these amazing times. I don't mind who wants to go first. Lou, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, why not? So I was reflecting on this this evening, actually, as I was listening to all of the students doing amazing presentations and listening to you describing their work as well. I think the one piece of advice I would give every student here is to remain hopeful, to always remember your value, always remember your worth, to never undersell yourself, in an organization. There will be many, many people out there who, you know, as Ellie was just talking about, will question the value of design. Don't ever let that get to you and your value of yourself, because it's so, so important. But also just to remain, you know, kind of remain open-minded to different ways of thinking. I think it's very, very easy once you've been in an organization for a certain period of time to start believing the hubris that actually it isn't possible to change, and maybe those people are right, and maybe you should listen to them, and maybe you're being naive and idealistic. And I always think of the really great designers that I've known in my life, and they are an amazing combination of both idealistic and pragmatic. So they're idealistic about what they want to achieve, and they're pragmatic about how they get there. And I think that's something that we all need to kind of aspire to. So that's my that's not one piece of advice, but yeah.
That's fantastic. No, thank you. Andre, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I would. I always say that this is just like being a musician. You've got to find your voice and make sure you find it. You know, we see, you know, there's a lot of repetition, and there's a lot of, you know, people are afraid to believe in their voice. It takes time, but you will get there. But, you know, always just try and find your voice. You know, that for me is the way that people stand out, and people really do make change, and people do believe. And I think it's been mentioned as well, we live in a time where it is difficult, but we also live in an industry which is, you know, is very potent. So, you know, if you're not happy where you are, you can always move, because we're right now, you know, we've got that golden ticket. You know, we're privileged enough to work in this amazing medium. We're finally getting valued, so take advantage of it. But please find your own voice.
Thank you, Andre. Ellie.
Be confident. I think whatever organization you go into right now, there'll be complexity to work through. There'll be different departments talking about different challenges. Don't be deterred, be confident, because actually you play a role in helping to join up all of the departments in the organizations that you work for, or all of the partners out there in the system that you're trying to change. And you have the skill set to actually bring those different areas of expertise and lived experience of a problem together in a way that other disciplines may not be able to do as well. So I think to hold on to your confidence, hold on to what you know and what you've just learned in this incredible 2-year program. Hold on to that, because you know, that's all you need to do, really.
Thank you so much. I think before I wind up, don't everyone run off just yet. I just want to say thank you to Lou with her 3 principles of good design, Andre, good services, I should say, Andre with his 9 principles, and Ellie with her 25 years of gathering evidence. They're great numbers. Thank you very much for that. Now, just to wind up quickly, hearing you speak at the end there reminded me, and I think it was something you've all said actually, that it's about behaviors. And when I came on this course, I asked the students and the staff to try and capture what this course was about. And we created this visual language, this set of icons and words that were about what these students are about. And I think you would agree, and I want you to look at the work, if not now, in the future, and see that curiosity and that courage that is essential behavior for service designer. Of course, collaborative. If you're not collaborative, you won't succeed. But these students are dynamic, they're innovative, and they're here to transform. They're not here to let be. They are passionate about transforming, as you will see from the project presentations and the project work. They're incredibly people focused and increasingly planet focused. We realize mankind is no longer at the center of anything. We're part of that ecosystem. And that has given us all a sense of purpose. Every single one of these projects has an amazing sense of purpose. Thank you for coming to this first event of the Festival of Better Ideas. It's been just a total joy to hear these 3 brilliant speakers. I am blessed, and I thank the RCA for having the brand value to attract all of you as an audience, and these amazing speakers and the amazing partners, many of you on this call, who we work with. This course is grounded in reality because of our relationship with our brilliant partners. There are a lot of events coming up. Most days we have alumni events at 11 o'clock. And at 6 o'clock, we're going to carry on taking each of those themes, if you can remember where we started, looking at the students will be individually showcasing their work, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more chance to see what's going on. This has been an extraordinary year. These students are remarkable people. When they came, they are now even more remarkable. Johnny Ive the other night said we need a word for this generation of students who are graduating this year, a word that captures their effort, their resilience, their guile to keep going. And that word should not include COVID with it. So I think we're all looking for that thing that captures this cohort of brilliant students who I've become so closely engaged with, and who I love very, very much. This is what they looked like 2 years ago when they arrived. What we would love you to do is now we're going to put something in the chat, which you can download. You can click on it in the chat, and then you will have this, and you'll have it in your history of your web browser. And in it, you will see a link to the room. The students will be in their room now. So please, if you can put off eating your dinner or do eat it, get a glass of wine, click on one of the Zoom rooms, and you can chat to a student from any of the projects you've seen. If you don't want to do it now, there are Calendly invites in there as well. And you can set up a meeting at any time with any one of the 33 projects, 50 students. You can go to our website, of course. Let me come out of share now and see if we can see that in the chat. Have we got it there, John? There's a Q&A, from Richard Haynes. Hello, Richard. I'm just going to see if we've got that link. John, have we able to do that? Or do I need to do it? Great, you should see that now. RCA Service Design Com, speak to the designers. This is your chance to talk to them as if you were at a real show. As I say, even if they're there now waiting for you, go and say hi, go and say, I'd love to speak to you on another occasion if you need to, or spend the rest of the night learning about some really great projects. Andre did that last night, and he can vouch for what a great experience it is. We're trying to recreate the reality of a degree show, only lacking the lukewarm Prosecco, which will make the first years laugh, because I'm always talking about that. Okay, Richard Haynes, before we go, has asked a very nice question. Is another design principle humbleness? It seems to me that traditional project management waterfall starts with a mandate, one single idea. We know the answer. Is this the opposite of humbleness and arrogance, and our design is humble? I ask this humbly. Richard, you always come up with amazing questions. I will answer that on behalf of you, and I think you are right. And I think it's been said a number of times by the students that we have to learn how to fail. If you can't learn how to fail, then you're not a good designer. We're not here. The old model of design has gone. The old model of lifting the tablecloth off the mysterious object underneath and going da-da, that's not what we're about anymore. We're facilitators moving to leaders. We're listeners who can interpret real needs. And I think we're moving in to a new area of design. But back to Lou Downe's fabulous opening statement, this is a good time to be a service designer. The world needs us. We saw in COVID how science didn't cut it, how even behavioral science didn't cut it. The world knows that it needs service design increasingly, and that's why we called this seminar Visible Impact. And I think we're seeing it now, and we've seen it tonight. Thank you again so much for joining our three amazing speakers, Lou Downe, Andre Lopez-Josange, and Ellie Runcie. We really appreciate every single one of you coming and taking part in this, and all the people on YouTube live streaming as well. It's the first time we've done that, so I hope you've enjoyed it. And just a huge thanks. When we have our things at the RCA, we tell everyone to come off mute and clap. Unfortunately, it's a webinar, so I don't think we can do that. So all you're going to hear is me going, thank you very, very much for an amazing, amazing evening and getting our festival off so well. Thank you, everybody. Go see students.
Thanks.
Thank you, speakers. Absolutely fantastic. I'll be hanging around here if anyone wants to have a chat with me. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.